Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Greg Glover. We're breaking into programming today to remember our 5 fallen servicemen. Memorial service is set to begin at 2 p.m. This is a live look at UTC's McKenzie Arena, where people are still making their way in at this very moment. Today's event is to honor these 5 brave men: Marines Sergeant Carson Holmquist, Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Sullivan, Lance Corporal Skip Wells, Staff Sergeant David A. Wyatt, and Navy Petty Officer 2nd Class Randall Smith. All lost their lives while serving at the Chattanooga Naval Operations and Marine Reserve Center on Amnicola Highway exactly 1 month ago tomorrow. The Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, landed in Chattanooga earlier this morning. He's first on the list of speakers at today's service. There's a look at one of the United States airplanes, the 757, rolling in. Once all the dignitaries arrived there at the Chattanooga airport, including the Secretaries of Defense and of the Navy, once they all arrived, they joined into a motorcade and left the airport. That was about an hour and a half after the first landing. As you can imagine, the motorcade route caused traffic backups all along the way and even beyond, as this is a recording of the dignitaries making their way into town. You see that large group of motorcycles there leading the way. Chattanooga Police, THP, started getting out on the highways around 10 o'clock this morning to stop the traffic a little earlier on. Channel 3 Eyewitness News anchor Matt Barber is standing by live at the Chattanooga airport. Matt, what can you tell us that you saw out there?
Yeah, Greg, we're live here off Airport Road at Level Field Loop on the north end of the airport, and photographer Timothy Bradfield will pan over my shoulder here just to give you a closer look at all of the aircraft that have arrived here in Chattanooga today. You know, we were originally told, the media was told, there was a planned touchdown of Air Force 2 around 1 o'clock today, but obviously those plans changed. We were here just after 11 o'clock after the first airplane touchdown. Then about 45 minutes later, an identical government aircraft touched down, as we know, carrying Vice President Joe Biden along with Secretary of Defense the Secretary of Defense who is here today, Ash Carter. Now, we can only speculate why he did touch down earlier today. We can only imagine that maybe he wanted a chance to meet early with the families of these fallen servicemen, maybe have a private moment with them to give his condolences to them. As we all know, tragedy has been a part of Vice President Joe Biden's life. He's not immune to that. Back in '72, he lost his first wife and a young daughter in a car accident. 2 of his sons survived in that car crash, one of them being Beau Biden. And if you've been following the headlines, you know that Beau Biden, who was Attorney General of Delaware, passed away in May from brain cancer. So, of course, Vice President Biden in a period of mourning himself right now. And, of course, Beau served in the Army National Guard. So this is a situation that's very close to him. So he came to pay his respects today. We are waiting on that service to begin. We're told it's about 10 minutes out, but that's what's it's looking like out here at the airport. We know the traffic was shut down for a long time, but it's moving freely now, and we do expect him to take off again maybe around 3:30, so keep that in mind if you have travel plans around the Chattanooga area.
Matt, thank you so much for your input out there at the airport. We know that motorcade will be rolling back toward you just after the service is over. That Joe Biden's motorcade, along with the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of the Navy, all there. A mention of some of the speakers along with those dignitaries is the Navy officer who fired back at the gunman who killed the 5 servicemen. He will be speaking at this memorial. His name is Lieutenant Commander Timothy White. He was the director there at the center, and he did fire back. There's another live look inside. Kelly McCarthy is there. We'll hear from her a little later on. But amongst the speakers, just wanted to let you know that Lieutenant Commander Timothy White will be in there. He's one of the people who fired back. You may hear the sound of a band that is likely the Marine Corps Band New Orleans. That group put together in 1978. It's comprised of 50 active duty Marines who specialize in services like this, whether it's recruitment, whether it's parade functions, and certainly solemn memorials like these. Let's listen in. Listening to the sounds of the Marine Corps Band New Orleans, a group of Marines, 50 or so, based in New Orleans, that their specialty is performing at ceremonies just like this at UTC's McKenzie Arena to honor our fallen five. Speakers today for the event will be, of course, Vice President Joe Biden, Secretary of the Navy Ray Mabus, Major Michael Abrams of the Marine Corps, and Lieutenant Commander Timothy White of the U.S. Navy. And of course, we mentioned him, someone who fired back during the attacks. He was the commander of the Navy Operational Support Center here in Chattanooga. Also, Chattanooga Mayor Andy Burke will be among the speakers, and the Secretary of Defense Ash Carter. There's a look at some of the things going on there at the arena. Also joining the Marine Corps Band New Orleans is the group, the U.S. Navy Sea Chanters. That's a choral group that you may have seen at different events, especially the National Day of Remembrance at the National Cathedral after the events of 9/11 in 2001, funerals of President Nixon and Reagan, and when President Ford was lying in state in the U.S. Capitol. They took part in that ceremony as well. After this ceremony today, the Chattanooga Lookouts will host a special guest tonight before their game with the Tennessee Smokies at the ballpark. They welcome the Chattanooga Police Department's hero in the 7/16 terror attacks, Officer Dennis Pedigo. He'll make his first appearance since the deadly shootings. This video coming from a point when that little girl there gave him a check that represented the money that she had collected selling lemonade to support the families. Natalie Potts did that story shortly after his discharge from the hospital. This afternoon, though, we confirmed with the Lookouts, the team will honor the injured officer in a pregame ceremony. His daughter will likely throw out the ceremonial first pitch. So if you need another reason to take in the Lookouts game, you have it there. CPD hero Officer Dennis Pedigo will be recognized by the Lookouts prior to the game. Let's have another look inside UTC's McKenzie Arena and see what we can listen to at this point. New Orleans playing a song with definitely a history itself. It Is Well With My Soul is the name of that as we honor the fallen five. You've seen their photos by now. Let's show you again. Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Sullivan, Sergeant Carson Holmquist there, Staff Sergeant David Wyatt. You also see Tom Sullivan, Navy Petty Officer Second Class Randall Smith there honoring these fallen five, several dignitaries in town, and a crowd inside McKenzie Arena this afternoon. People began arriving around 10-11 o'clock hour, going through security to get into this event. Several calls to the Eyewitness newsroom as the motorcade made its way downtown. Traffic was shut down in all directions as the motorcade made its way along the interstate and took the 4th Street exit heading into McKenzie Arena there. As we look inside, let's give another listen to the United States Marine Band, New Orleans. You're listening to the U.S. Marine Band New Orleans as they play for the crowd there at UTC's McKenzie Arena. Today's ceremony remembering our fallen five will begin shortly with an introduction by Marine Corps Sergeant Major Anthony Spadaro. That'll be followed by the national anthem, played once again by the U.S. Marine Corps Band New Orleans. They're called that because they're stationed there in New Orleans. Invocation will be delivered then by the Rear Admiral from the U.S. Navy, Margaret Kibben. She is the Chief Chaplain of the U.S. Navy. She is the first woman to be appointed that position. She's served that post or posts like it for a long time. She's a Presbyterian minister. She'll deliver the invocation as they get started. That will be followed by the singing of Amazing Grace by the United States Navy Sea Chanters. They sang that very song from the National Cathedral on that National Day of Remembrance and Prayer after the terror attacks of 9/11/2001. Should be especially moving. And after that, we get into the speakers, and there are several dignitaries in town today. Tell you a little bit about them. Of course, Navy Secretary Ray Mabus, leader of the Navy and Marine Corps there, longest serving. He served since 2009, longest serving since World War II as the Secretary of the Navy. He's a Mississippi guy, former governor of Mississippi. He was ambassador to Saudi Arabia under President Clinton, and he holds several degrees as well from the University of Mississippi, from Johns Hopkins, from Harvard University, and he was a naval man himself. He was aboard the USS Little Rock when he was in the Navy. He will be followed by the Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter. Ash Carter, as he's known, the Secretary. He was just recently sworn in back in February, as a matter of fact. He's a veteran of the Defense Department. He's served as Deputy Secretary and Undersecretary. He's a former educator at Oxford, at Stanford, at Harvard's Kennedy School. And he has several degrees from Yale, from Oxford, from Rockefeller University, and from MIT. Looks like the Marine Corps Band is playing once again. The Vice President of the United States will speak as well. We saw the United States planes out at the airfield, out at Level Field just moments ago. Motorcade bringing them all to UTC's McKenzie Arena. In attendance there are the families of the fallen five as well, and a very large media contingent, as not only are we carrying this on air, we're carrying it on the internet. The Navy's carrying it, the city's carrying the feed. Many people around the country are very interested in this memorial service here at McKenzie Arena of our fallen five whose lives were taken on July 16th, just 1 month ago tomorrow. Let's listen once again to the Marine Corps Band New Orleans. This is the prelude to the service remembering our fallen five there at UTC's McKenzie Arena. If you take a look at the floor of the arena there, you can see white on the what you would call the house right side of the floor and dark colored uniforms on the house left side of the floor. Navy officers and servicemen and women sitting on the right side, the dark blue of the dress blues of the U.S. Marine Corps on the left side, and you see some family members sprinkled in there as well. As you look up onto the dais there, you see the familiar lectern that has the dark blue top with the seal, this time of the Vice President of the United States, with the American flag behind it there, the wood grain down below, and to the right, kind of a tradition of the armed forces. When a serviceman or woman is taking the line of duty, you see their boots, a rifle, and a helmet. There's the seal of Vice President. That's where all of our speakers will be standing shortly. And there's in remembrance of the five: boots, a rifle, and a helmet on the top. And those boxes obviously with plaques remembering the five service members lost on July 16th. Continue with our list of speakers. We mentioned earlier Lieutenant Commander Timothy White will be speaking. He's the commander of the Navy Operational Support Center there on Amnicola Highway. We found out last night that he, in fact, shot back during the attacks. A look at McKenzie Arena as they started getting things ready. And there's the Vice President on happier days. Today, of course, a much solemner occasion. There you see Marine and Navy officers or service members there discussing what was going to be happening. Lieutenant Commander White will speak. Also, Major Michael Abrams. Major Michael Abrams is of the U.S. Marine Corps. He's the commander of the Mike Battery. Battery M, stationed part of it there at the Naval and Marine Center on Amnicola Highway. He makes his home in New York. He will be here to absolutely give his thoughts on what's happened and on the service of those lost. Rounding out the list will be Chattanooga Mayor Andy Burke, of course, elected in 2013. Before that, a state senator and a lawyer. He'll be part of the speakers there today. But these five are the ones we're remembering today. Can we take that full and look at those faces one more time? Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Sullivan from Springfield, Massachusetts, served 2 tours in Iraq, survived the Battle of Abu Ghraib, and was a 2-time Purple Heart recipient. Known to look out for his fellow Marines, he did that July 16th by helping more than a dozen others escape before he turned back for 2 servicemen who were unaccounted for. His close friends say that he'd never leave a man behind. That's just the kind of man he was. That's Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Sullivan. He was buried in Massachusetts at the Veterans Memorial Cemetery. Also, Sergeant Carson Holmquist, survived by his parents, his wife Jasmine, their 2-year-old son Wyatt. 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan. A Wisconsin native, Sergeant Carson Holmquist, was buried there in Grantsburg, Wisconsin. Lance Corporal Squire Skip Wells, a 21-year-old, he was a Sprayberry High School graduate that's in Marietta, Georgia. He had a burial at the National Cemetery in Canton, Georgia. They had an absolutely spectacular remembrance service there at his old high school, with everything from the band that he played in to his fellow ROTC members paying tribute to him. Staff Sergeant David Wyatt, a 35-year-old born in North Carolina, raised in Arkansas, made his home in Hickson. He joined the Marines after the attacks of 9/11. He was a veteran of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Staff Sergeant Wyatt died a hero. According to his father, he helped other Marines escape, and he too went back inside for 2 who were missing, and that's when he encountered the shooter that day, survived by his wife of 10.5 years, Lori, his daughter Rebecca, and son Heath, all of them of Hickson. He was buried at Chattanooga National Cemetery. And Petty Officer 2nd Class up there in the upper left-hand corner, Randall Smith. He survived 2 days after the attack. After surgery, he was said to have acknowledged his wife and given her the thumbs up, held on for just a few more hours. He was buried also at the Chattanooga National Cemetery. You remember that procession of his, the funeral at First Baptist Church in Fort Oglethorpe. They took the time to drive up by both memorials, both sites of the shootings on July 16th. First, there on Lee Highway at the recruitment center, and then on Amnicola, both locations where huge makeshift memorials had been set up and where they remain to this day. And of course, Chattanoogans and people from all over the Tennessee Valley lined the route from Fort Oglethorpe all the way to the Chattanooga National Cemetery. We mentioned the speakers today. Vice President Biden arrived early. I believe we have some video of him in the motorcade there. You see the motorcycles of the Chattanooga Police Department and the THP, I believe those the tan ones in the back leading the motorcade. Certainly the limousine of the vice president there, using SUVs in this case, but you see the flags that are on those vehicles as they frequently switch places for security. Never know which one he might be in. That makes them a harder target if there were someone out there who was looking to do something untoward to our vice president. But you see them there making their way to McKenzie Arena, and inside where they are at this moment, I guess we're just about 3.5 minutes away from the beginning of the service, we've been told. There's another look inside as we stand ready. Families of the fallen five arrived earlier in buses. Our Michelle Herron was outside. She's tweeting some things as she sees them as the crowd was being let in today. So you have service members, fellow service members, you have citizens of the area who are all invited. This is a free event. They just had to show up and go through security, much like you're boarding a plane. And then you have the dignitaries and, of course, the service members of our fallen five. Let's listen in one more time as we prepare for the beginning of this service of remembrance. And we're following the memorial service to remember the fallen five here from UTC's McKenzie Arena. You saw the crowd stand and believe that the families of the fallen five are being led to their seats at this point, right there in the front row as we get set to begin this memorial service. Vice President Joe Biden is in attendance, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Navy, several other distinguished members will be there to speak. Also, we'll have more music from the United States Marine Band New Orleans and the Navy Sea Chanters will take part in that service as well. This to remember the five who were lost on July 16th. That's 1 month ago tomorrow at the Naval Operations Center and Marine Reserve Center on Amnicola Highway. As you see the Vice President entering now, solemn ceremony set to begin. He'll be one of the speakers as we get underway here at UTC's McKenzie Arena. Hundreds in attendance. They had made room for, they said, some 8,000 or so, 8,500. We'll get a final count on how many were able to show up today with the weather a bit questionable on the outside. Sometimes rain, sometimes just cloudy skies. But we are following the ceremony here. We're also streaming online. We know lots of people, no matter their location, want to take part in this latest remembrance, this put on by the Department of Defense. And then you know everything from funerals with full military honors to visitation of heads of state. If there's something, whether it's solemn or ceremonial, the military does it the right way, and we're promised that this will be an unforgettable service to rightly honor the service of those who were lost on July 16th. Let's check back in and see if we can see exactly what's going on at this moment. It seems we've got a speaker coming to the podium, and that might be Sergeant Major Anthony Spadero of the Marine Corps. Let's go live.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The music for today's memorial service is provided by the Marine Band New Orleans under the direction of Chief Warrant Officer 3 Michael Smith and the United States Navy Band Sea Chanters under the direction of Commander Ken Collins. Please, a round of applause for them now. On behalf of the Commander, Marine Forces Reserve and Marine Forces North, Lieutenant General Richard P. Mills, and the Chief of Navy Reserve and the Commander, Navy Reserve Force, Vice Admiral Robin R. Braun, welcome to today's memorial service, where we'll honor the lives of 5 American servicemen: Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Sullivan, Staff Sergeant David Wyatt, Sergeant Carson Holmquist, Logistics Specialist 2nd Class Randall Smith, and Lance Corporal Squire Wells. Can you please stand as we honor our country with the playing of our national anthem and remain standing for the invocation given today by Rear Admiral Margaret Kibben, Chief of Chaplains, United States Navy. Ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem.
If you would, please pray with me. God, our Creator, for whom one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day, for us 7 minutes have cost us 5 lifetimes. And so on this day we appeal to your timeless grace and pray for your compassion as we continue this journey of immeasurable grief. We ask that you would lift up our heavy hearts, that we would know the strength and comfort of your abiding presence. Preside over this ceremony and stand alongside those who grieve the loss of a cherished past and a hoped-for future with these sons, husbands, fathers, and brothers. In this moment, and in the days, months, and years ahead, assure and comfort each who grieve with the eternal promise of your steadfast love. Cover them with tangible evidence of your care as they are surrounded this day with friends, neighbors, and family. Remind them now and in the times of their deepest need of the certainty of your provision poured out through the generosity and vigilant support of this community of Chattanooga and this entire country. May the words and the tributes offered, though dimmed with tears, express the depth of our gratitude to you for allowing us to have shared our days with these heroes who throughout their short lives selflessly dedicated themselves to serve this country. May our appreciation for their sacrifices bear fruit, that each of us would be encouraged to reach into the wells of your grace and respond just as fearlessly and faithfully to preserve the future for our children and the freedom of this nation. In our service to you and in the strength of your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Saved a
Ladies and gentlemen, the Mayor of the City of Chattanooga, Andy Burke.
Mr. Vice President, Secretary Carter, Secretary Mabus, honored members of the United States Navy and Marine Corps, the families of our fallen heroes, ladies and gentlemen. On the morning of July 16, 2015, one chapter of our history came to an end in Chattanooga. The story we had written for ourselves was bold, optimistic, aglow in the warmth of the summer sun. It was forward-looking. We felt satisfied, basking in awards with titles like Best Town Ever. But on July 16, after the first reports of shots fired came, all of us stopped, terrified, then horrified, then simply exhausted. Without words, we waited. When we received word, when we learned that 5 of our neighbors had been lost, that 5 of the bravest men of the greatest fighting force in the world had been murdered, and that Marines, sailors, and our own police had run into the fire, not from it, but into the fire, we were devastated. What will we do? How would we respond? And most importantly, what will we be like as a city on July 17th and July 18th and the next day and the next? To all of our honored guests, to the brave men and women of our military and their families, and to the Chattanooga Police Department, I want to tell you this. The very first thing we did was to pray without ceasing in gratitude for each and every one of you. Like most people in our community, I went day after day to the makeshift memorials. They sprung up immediately, a testimony from a city that wished to pay tribute. There, the endless crowds were quiet, respectful, solemn. We walked past the flags in silence, reading and rereading the names of those who died defending our freedom, comforting one another. For days, we held hands as Chattanoogans, children and seniors alike. We attended funerals together. We sat in circles together. We held our breath, and we held each other. And as we did, as we pressed close, we shared one prayer: for light, for hope, for a vision and a story that might once more be ours. As a community, we learn names that will forever be bound up in the Chattanooga story. Holmquist, Wells, Sullivan, Wyatt, Smith. Obsessively, we look for ways to help these families, hoping that some act we could perform might bring relief to their agony. Each day we learn more about the lives tragically cut short. They were sons, husbands, fathers, but they were so much more. Fishermen, flag football players, Dropkick Murphys fans, Eagle Scouts, music lovers. To the families who are here today, although few of us knew your beloved, I want to say on behalf of an entire family, of our entire city, we grieve with each of you. But grief is only part of our story. As days passed, we began to open our eyes. We learned more about the police officers who acted valiantly to end this senseless violence, and we gave thanks for their bravery and their skill. General Dunford, I was there in our police service center with Marine Sergeant Major Spadero as he addressed a lineup ready to head out for patrol. The Sergeant Major told our officers, if I was headed into a firefight, I would want the Chattanooga Police Department to have my back. You should be proud. I am, and we are. And so as one chapter ended, Chattanoogans had changed. The world had come to us. And the question then became, what would we become? Fortunately, even a rewritten history has precedent. 5 millennia ago, another people were cut off from their history by violence. Physically and spiritually exiled, they too wondered in the dark, what would we become? A voice from a prophet promised them there would be no more gloom for those who were in distress. Isaiah wrote in chapter 9, verse 2, "The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned." It is right we remember this story here today, here in Chattanooga, because despite the darkness of the past 30 days, there is yet light. One chapter of our history has ended, but we have begun anew. Even through the darkness, the world has seen our character. And our new day as a city has shown a community that refuses to be torn apart, that understands our essential duty as Americans is to shoulder some of the pay these mourning families must feel, that has shown compassion and unity and love under the most difficult of circumstances. We find no rest in our long night, but we pray, we serve, we listen, we learn. And we do so now in the hope and faith of a people of a summer morning who believe that today and tomorrow there is yet another light on the horizon. It is one city, Chattanooga strong. God bless these families, our great city, and the United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, the commanding officer of Battery M, 3rd Battalion, 14th Marines, Major Michael Abrams.
Families of the fallen, distinguished guests, Marines and sailors, family and friends. Today we honor the faithful service of 5 great Americans. We honor their families who will carry on their legacy. And as Marines and sailors, we say farewell to our fallen brothers. As the commanding officer of Battery M, I am deeply proud of how our Marines and sailors responded on July 16th. In the chaos of that moment, they were selfless in their efforts to take care of one another, and they acted with unquestionable courage. One Marine, with total disregard for his own safety, ran throughout the facility to warn others. Several Marines scooped up children at a nearby playground and quickly moved the families out of harm's way. And some Marines made the decision to go back into the fray to search for others. Our brothers that day ran toward the danger, not away from it. They took back the initiative. They had a bias for action. They are not victims. They are Marines. They are sailors. Gunnery Sergeant Sullivan, Staff Sergeant Wyatt, Sergeant Holmquist, Petty Officer 2nd Class Smith, and Lance Corporal Wells dedicated their short time between 2 eternities to the service of their country. And in their final moments, during the worst of surprises, when many of us would have run, their gut reaction was to protect and to ensure the safety of their brothers and sisters. These men leave behind a legacy of selflessness and courage that humbles and inspires each one of us, and they will always be remembered. There is another legacy that our fallen brothers leave behind. heartbroken families who have lost their husbands, fathers, brothers, and sons. There are no words that we can offer to make this loss easier or to shorten your grieving. We can only offer our heartfelt condolences and let you know that these men were loved and that they have joined the ranks of the many heroes who died in the service of our country. To the tens of thousands of people in Chattanooga, Grantsburg, Springfield, and Marietta who came out to show their respects with tears in their eyes and hands over their hearts, to the Chattanooga police officers and EMTs who quickly and courageously responded to our calls, and to all of the community members and former Mike Battery Marines who provided unbelievable support during this difficult time, know that we felt your pain and we experienced your love. In a moment that shook this community, you all were there to help us continue to move forward, and we cannot thank you enough. Finally, to our enemies, whoever and wherever you may be, we will not succumb to fear. You will never touch what's in our hearts and what's in our minds. This act has only strengthened our resolve and rallied the will of this nation. We will continue our mission here in this great city just like we've done for the past 68 years. And when the Marines of Battery M get the call to once again deploy and fight for our country, we will be ready. Semper Fidelis.
Ladies and gentlemen, the commanding officer of Navy Operational Support Center, Chattanooga, Lieutenant Commander Timothy White.
Calmness, rustling leaves, screeching tires, gunfire. Those were the sounds of July 16th, 2015, sounds that transformed a beautiful summer morning into a day filled with tragedy and tears. Sounds that few heard but will never be forgotten. Certainly not by those of us who lived through them, and sounds that affected so many lives inside and outside of Chattanooga and throughout our great nation. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here to honor our fallen heroes. I stand before you today as a voice of hope, a hope to return to that calm. That Thursday morning of July 16th is a date all of us here today will never forget. On that day, 4 brave Marines lost their lives, and 1 amazing sailor was mortally wounded. They died as they lived doing their duty with honor, courage, and commitment, defending their fellow sailors and Marines, even at the expense of their own lives. These men volunteered to serve. They were sons, brothers, fathers. We are eternally grateful for their sacrifice and the sacrifice of their families. But the story does not, it cannot, it will not end here. The Navy and Marine Corps team will not falter in our mission, defending the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We, the living, must rededicate ourselves here to the cause for which these brave men gave their lives. It is hard to keep from feeling like we should stop and pause. Stop the mission to mourn for our brothers. But they were warriors. They would not want us to stop for their sakes. They would want us to do our duty with more tenacity, heightened vigor, unwavering commitment, and undaunted courage. They would want us to do our duty, and we will do it. And in doing so, we will honor our fallen. We will continue to pursue our mission with excellence and perseverance. Here in Chattanooga, the price for freedom on July 16th was high. Freedom doesn't come easy. It never has. But freedom is worth fighting for, and if necessary, dying for. These heroes knew this. They valued freedom, not just their own freedom, but my freedom and your freedom. Our enemies seek to divide and distract us. As long as we remain united, firm in our devotion to our duties and our country's principles, we will never be defeated. I am here to tell you today that the July 16th attack only made us more firm in those devotions. It only bound us more tightly in pursuit of our mission. Those men, those warriors whom we lost here would not want us to mourn forever. They would want us to pick up our pack, to carry on, and fight the good fight so that this nation will never again feel this terror. That is how we return to the calm, always remembering, always serving, always being faithful in our fight to freedom. It is a privilege to be with you here today to honor those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice and price for freedom. I thank God for them. I thank God for you. I thank God for this great nation. May He guide you, and may He bless the United States of America. I salute you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mabus.
As a military organization, we have experienced far too often the searing pain of combat losses and honored the many who, in Lincoln's words, laid their lives as sacrifices on the altar of freedom. Today, we honor 5 patriots who have made the same sacrifice in the service of their nation, this time here at home. We very rightly set aside special days and have solemn rituals to recognize, remember, revere the men and women in uniform who have paid the final price in the defense of America. These Marines, this sailor, deserve the same thing. We are a family, the Navy and Marine Corps family. We work together, we serve together, we overcome together. As a family, we grieve together. Together, we will assure that they, like those who went before, will be remembered as heroes, because that is what they are, heroes. Ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. And ordinary Thursday became a day of extraordinary horror, but also extraordinary heroism, as shipmates, law enforcement officers, first responders ran into danger to protect others and aid them, and as colleagues, friends, and strangers helped each other away from danger, even at the risk of their own lives. 2 of those wounded in this valiant effort, Police Officer Dennis Pettigo and Marine Sergeant DeMonte Chile, is with us. He is with us today. So we memorialize as heroes those we lost, and profoundly thank the heroes who are here today. And the courage witnessed that Thursday did not end with the closing of that awful day. Recruiters nationwide went to work on Friday, encouraging and assisting the nation's finest young men and women in joining the Navy and Marine Corps. And on Saturday and Sunday, tens of thousands of reservists reported for their drill weekend. This pure act of evil could not keep them from their duty. That commitment is the essence of sailors and Marines. It was demonstrated under the worst of circumstances on July 16th, and it has not wavered since. Still, we know it will take time for those with visible and invisible wounds to heal. The shock, the anger over what occurred last month will take us all time to deal with, because what happens defies comprehension, defies understanding. We know that while the pain will recede, it will never completely leave. We know that although it will shrink, the hole in our hearts will never completely close. And we know that although we will heal, our Navy and Marine Corps family will never again feel completely whole. 5 taken. 5 husbands, fathers, brothers, sons, workmates, taken from us suddenly, violently, cruelly. But what cannot be taken is our love and our memories. As we remember these individuals that we cherished, it will not be as victims. Their lives cannot be determined by the terrible, inexplicable way they ended, but rather by how they lived. Tom Sullivan served in the Marine Corps for almost 2 decades, including 2 combat tours in Iraq, receiving 2 Purple Hearts. Gunny was known as a Marine among Marines, immersed in the Corps, living his life by the ethos of that Corps. David White, enlisted after 9/11, served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Japan, Korea. His love for the Marine Corps exceeded only by his love for his wife Lori and their children Rebecca and Heath. Carson Holmquist whose decision to serve his country was second nature to him. 2 combat tours in Afghanistan, and was strengthened and supported by the love of his family, his wife Jasmine, their son Wyatt, and on the anticipation of their child to come. Randall Smith, grandson of a Navy veteran, had just re-enlisted in the Navy after 3 years with Marines aboard the amphibious ship USS Wasp. He lived a life of service and loved his wife Angie and their 3 girls, Lila, Ayla, Kayla. Skip Wells, in the Marine Corps for only a year, but even in that time stood out as someone who cared more about his fellow Marines and the mission than he did about himself. These are each unique individuals. But as I've spoken to their families and friends, common threads emerge: a love of family and country, the value and pride placed in serving America, and the values that others placed on their lives. Today, we remember them and we mourn. Tomorrow, they join so many other Navy and Marine Corps heroes whose lives and deeds shine forever bright. And in the days and months and years that follow, together, we will remain as they did: Semper Fortis, always courageous; Semper Fidelis, always faithful.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter.
To the families of Gunnery Sergeant Sullivan, Staff Sergeant Wyatt, Sergeant Holmquist, Petty Officer Smith, and Lance Corporal Wells, to you, it's with heavy hearts that Stephanie and I join you this afternoon. We have no words for what you feel today, because try as we may, and try as we do, we can never fully know. But we do know what the lives of your loved ones meant to the security of our country, and we will never forget. Vice President Biden, you honor the force with your presence today, as you do so often. Secretary Mabus, Admiral Greenert, General Dunford, Governor Haslam, Mayor Burke, distinguished members of Congress, guests, and ladies and gentlemen, as we gather today, we cannot erase the pain of our loss, but still we come together as fellow citizens to honor these 5 fallen patriots, to mourn with those who loved them, to provide comfort and healing as best we can, to remember the lives these brave men led, to reflect on the meaning their lives have for us, the duty their deaths impose upon us. Their lives were truly exemplary. Many of them served abroad and fought on the front lines of faraway battlefields in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. And here at home, they were serving among the many men and women in uniform who represent our military communities in communities across the country, on the front lines of the force of the future. The meaning of their lives is therefore clear, crystal clear, and we will be forever proud of them. The meaning of their killing is yet unclear. What combination of disturbed mind, violent extremism and hateful ideology was at work, we don't know. Perhaps it will never be fully known, let alone fathomable by all who have the decency and conscience to value their fellow human beings. But we do know this. We know that we will do what it takes to protect the servicemen and women who protect us. This is something we, all of us, me, President Obama, Vice President Biden, Secretary Mabels, General Dunford, Admiral Greenert, all the men and women of the Department of Defense, this is something we take personally. That is why I've directed the military services to fundamentally review their domestic security procedures, as well as to take immediate steps to improve the security and force protection of our personnel. And we will do more if necessary. We also know that we are the many, the just, the noble, and that the few who threaten or incite harm to Americans, violent extremists or terrorists, wherever they are, will surely, very surely, no matter how long it takes, come to feel the long arm and the hard fist of justice. And we know that those who attempt to inspire fear or terror will find no satisfaction, will have no success in the United States of America. Instead, we come back. We come back from tragedy, stronger and more united. Because across America, our reserve facilities and recruiting centers are still open. Young men and women are still signing up to serve, to defend their country. They will carry forward the legacy of the fallen, and like them, they too will serve in the finest fighting force the world has ever known. Even here in this great city, Chattanooga, Tennessee, recruits are still lining up to volunteer, in some cases more than they were before. In fact, one future sailor named Alexis enlisted just last week. She'd been talking to recruiters in Chattanooga before the shooting, but this senseless violence only made her want to serve her country more. It only strengthened her resolve to stand up against fear and hatred. As she said the other day, we're not going to let one incident destroy us. We're all standing strong as a community and as a whole. That's the spirit of Chattanooga, the spirit of Tennessee, and the spirit of America and its military. And that's how we heal, by standing strong together. So to the Sullivan family, to the Wyatt family, to the Holmquist family, the Smith family, and the Wells family, you're part of our family, our military family, and you always will be. Your strength and sacrifice will continue to guide us, inspire us, and remain with us forever and ever. May God hold close and grant peace to the souls of those who no longer live with us, but will live on within us. May God watch over the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who continue to defend us all, and may God continue to bless this great nation, the United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the United States of America, Joe Biden. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to join my colleagues, but as I told each of the family members, I wish I were not here. for I have some sense of how hard it is for you to be here. Mr. Mayor, as I told you a little bit earlier, you should be so proud of your city. And to my good friend, Chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, you should be so proud of your state. Congresswoman Black, Congressman Fleischman, and I want to say that you've been through a lot, and understand that Congressman Jay Lauget is here, Lay is here as well. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8 reads, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" Each man we honor today gave the same response in Isaiah. "Here I am. Send me. Send me." Gunnery Sergeant Tommy Sullivan, tethered to his Irish roots, chastened by his Italian mom. Great combination, Mom. A Red Sox fan, a neighborhood kid who never really left the neighborhood except to go to Iraq twice. 2 Purple Hearts, as we Irish say, a heart of gold. As his hometown paper said, everything a Marine should be. Staff Sergeant Dave Wyatt, Iraq, Afghanistan, in the darkest and most violent days of both those wars. Dave, an Eagle Scout, as a camp counselor pulling a young man trapped in a canoe below the water of a fallen tree, saving his life. As his hometown paper said, someone you could always count on. Sergeant Carson Holmquist, Afghanistan, son of a Marine, 2 tours in Vietnam, always respectful, always looking out for others. A Marine even before he took the oath. Petty Officer 2nd Class Randall Smith, grandson of a Navy veteran, has been pointed out already, a baseball star in his hometown, always smiling, always there for his friends. As they say in his town, someone you always wanted to be around. Lance Corporal Skip Wells, devout, a friend to everyone, always there, always wanted to be a Marine, to protect from the time he was a kid. His classmates in his hometown newspapers said he was always looking out for the other guy. It was no surprise to anyone who knew them, anyone who grew up with them, that they chose the profession they did. It was stamped in their DNA. Being a sailor, being a Marine is not what they did. It was like all of you, is who they are. They each said, "I'll go. I'm here. Send me." I didn't have the privilege of knowing any one of them personally, but oh, I knew them. Confident, committed, determined, trustworthy, passionate, and always, always loyal. I knew them. They were my son, and so many other sons I know. They were, with the exception of Sully, the 9/11 generation, but he was that too. Men of honor, men of faith, men of determination, imbued with a sense of duty that's hard to explain where they got it from. A sense of commitment to their family and friends from the time they were kids to the moment they died. Each of these guys, the best that I know, Bob, had this instinct to protect. Just an instinct. You grew up with guys like this. They had that instinct. You knew if you were in trouble, they'd be there. They were different. A commitment to family and friends. Again, we're part of that remarkable 9/11 generation. I would respectfully suggest, after being around a long time, the finest generation of warriors the world has ever known. That is not hyperbole. The finest generation of warriors the world has ever known. This generation, 4.2 million of them joined after 9/11. 4.2 million. Over 2,200,000 deployed to Afghanistan or Iraq. Every one of them, when they signed up, knew it was probable, not possible, probable, they'd be sent into battle. A battle unlike any in our history. State actors, but many stateless actors. Difficult to tell, friend from foe. Like thousands of men and women, many here in this arena, they went. They raised their hand, said, "Send me." What a remarkable generation. A generation who, along with their families, have made great sacrifices for this country. Every day, compliments of the Defense Department. My staff calls early in the morning. I carry a card in my pocket of my schedule every day for the last 9 years. A little box in the bottom of my card. It lists the number of dead, the number wounded, not a general number, the exact number, the precise number. Because every single solitary one of these warriors leaves behind a whole family and community. I can't stand it when I'm here. About 6,700 dead. It's 6,717, one added in the last week. Wounded, it's 52,321, 5 added since last week in Afghanistan. There are thousands still in harm's way. And we're here not only to pay tribute to these 5 heroes, the 6,717 like them who lost their lives in the line of duty, but we're also here to pay tribute to the families of the 5 as well as the 6,717. First, to all the families of all the fallen, your country says thank you. Thank you for raising such incredible men and women with such a keen sense of duty and honor. From the time I was a kid, my mother had a saying. She'd look at you and say, "Joey, remember. Remember, you are defined by your courage and you are redeemed by your loyalty." That was my mother's code. You are defined by your courage and redeemed by your loyalty. I say to the families here today, your sons, husbands, brothers, they are the purest example of my mother's standard. They met it and exceeded it. They were defined by their courage and redeemed by their loyalty. To the families here, as I said when I met you a moment ago, I've spoken to all of you on the phone before that. Thank you for sharing this memorial with us. I know it's hard. It's hard. Because it brings back it brings back that very moment when you got that call. For I know no memorial, no words, no acts can provide the solace your hearts yearn to acquire. That intense, consuming feeling of loss and emptiness that continues to linger, in some cases, grows more intense. But I do hope it eases your grief just a little bit, knowing that the people of your hometowns, the people of Chattanooga, and tens of millions of Americans really do grieve with you. I also know what incredible courage it took to be here. It requires you, as I said, to relive. But one of the things that I've learned that I want you to know, I hope you gain some solace from it, that people never talk about. Your courage is an inspiration to hundreds of thousands of people all across this country who are suffering and struggling with their own horrific loss. Maybe not as a consequence of wearing a uniform, but have lost a husband, a wife, a son, a daughter. And I promise you, as they struggle with their own tragedies, wondering, will I make it? Can I survive? They see you. They hear you. They've come to learn about you. And I promise you, you give them hope. Years from now, you'll be places and you'll find people coming up to you you never, ever knew. And they'll say thank you to you. Thank you. Because they look at you and say, if they can do it, if they can show up, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can overcome. You're literally an inspiration, and America owes you just for being here. and always with the men we honor today. John Milton, the English poet, once wrote, "They also serve who only stand and wait." Jill and I, my wife, the entire Biden family, have you in our thoughts and our prayers, as you have had us in yours. I also know there's nothing at this moment that can fill that deep black hole, that open wound of losing your son, your husband, your brother, your father. Nothing can replace the son who, as he walked away and turned and smiled at you, lit up your life, literally lit up your life just smiling at you. Made you realize how worthwhile life was. Or the husband who knew your fears even before you expressed them, whose gentle hand could soothe them away. The dad who tucked you in at night, just touched your face, made you feel so secure. The brother who always, always, always had your back. You've lost very much. You've given so very much. But please know that He will always be with you in the deepest recesses of your heart, in your every thought. He'll be the voice you hear in your ear telling you that's okay. He'll be that feeling in your chest that just calms you down. That look from the mirror that gives you confidence to move forward. And that sunset that says, I see you. I see you. And the day will come, as hard as it is to believe, when His memory brings a smile to your lips before a tear to your eyes. It takes time. In my experience, it takes getting through every season at least once. But it will come. It will come. And that's when you know you'll be all right. My prayer is that day comes sooner rather than later. But it will come. So hold on to one another tightly. Gunnery Sergeant Tommy Sullivan, Staff Sergeant Dave Wyatt, Sergeant Carson Holmquist, Petty Officer Second Class Randall Smith, Lance Corporal Skip Wells. These are the men made of the stuff that makes this the greatest country on earth. They're part of less than 1% of the American population that protects 99% of us. They're what makes us who we are. They're the backbone, as these women and men here are. The virtual bone and sinew of this country. And in the face of dangers and threats, we look out for one another. We stand together. We never, never bow. We never, never bend. Our national character is no match for the cowardice and perversion that we face. These perverse ideologues, warped theocrats, they may be able to inspire a single lone wolf to commit a savage act but they can never threaten who we are. When this perverted jihadist struck, everyone responded. Marines and sailors moving from room to room, helping fellow warriors to safety. Marines and sailors helping fellow warriors jump the fence away from danger, only to turn back into the fight to save more. Marines and sailors grabbing children from nearby playgrounds, shepherding them out of harm's way. Warriors fighting back, getting people to safety. Warriors at a recruiting center, helping countless people stand up and serve. Chattanooga police officers taking shots but still ending the rampage. First responders, doctors, nurses, saving lives. Residents bringing food to the police officers on duty at the shooting site. Makeshift memorials, interfaith vigils that grew bigger day after day after day. Thousands of people line the streets in your hometowns. The funeral routes of Gunnery Sergeant Tommy Sullivan, Staff Sergeant Dave Wyatt, Sergeant Carson Holmquist, Petty Officer Second Class Randall Smith, Lance Corporal Skip Wells, and every stretch of road and intersection, cars, trucks, football practices, stopped and waited and showed their reverence. All for the purpose of reasserting who we are. We are unyielding. Chattanooga, the country has and still stands with you. And it will remember what you've done. It'll remember and remind everyone who we are at our best. And we have a message for those perverted cowards around the world. America never yields, never bends, never cowers, never stands down, endures, responds, and always overcomes. For we are Americans, and never underestimate us. It's always been a bad bet to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless each of the fallen and their families. May God protect our troops wherever they are. And may God continue to bless the United States of America. God love you.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please stand? For Lieutenant Commander James Story, Chaplain Corps, United States Navy, will now offer the benediction.
Let us pray. Holy God and Creator of all, you are our rock and our comfort in the very midst of life's most difficult moments. In the grief and the sorrow of tragedy, we cried out to you, and in fulfillment of your promise, you have delivered us. You have made the storms be stilled and the waves of the seas are hushed. Now as we journey forward, we renew our praise and our commitment to you. We honor you for this moment of healing. Ease the anguish of the families and all those who mourn. Accept the tears that we have shed as a testimony of love for our fallen. Transform these tears into the waters of life, that going forward, we might be strengthened by their courage, their dedication, and their faith. We are grateful for the steadfast love and the wondrous works of your hands revealed to us in the hearts of this community. In the aftermath of heartbreak, the stranger became neighbor, and the friend became family. Guard each of us in the love that binds us closer together, that we might be renewed in our faith of each other. And finally, most loving Father, guard our hearts and our minds that we might, in this world, know the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need, joy and sorrow, with the faith and the hope of your abiding presence, that we as your people might truly know peace. We ask all this in your most holy name. Amen.
Eternal Father, grant, we pray, to our Marines forth night and day the courage, honor, strength, and skill, serve thy love fulfill. Be thou the shield forevermore from every peril to the core. Eternal Father, strong to save, whose hand doth bind the restless wave, who bids the mighty ocean deep its own appointed limits keep. Oh, hear us when we cry to thee, for those in peril on the sea.
Please be seated.
Battery First Sergeant. Call the roll.
Aye, aye, sir.
Gunnery Sergeant Dahl.
Present.
Staff Sergeant E. Steps.
Present.
Petty Officer First Class Brooks.
Present.
Sergeant Walters. Present. Lance Corporal Jeswald. Present. Gunnery Sergeant Sullivan. Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Sullivan. Gunnery Sergeant Thomas J. Sullivan. Staff Sergeant Wyatt. Staff Sergeant David Wyatt. Staff Sergeant David A. Wyatt. Sergeant Holmquist. Sergeant Carson Holmquist. Sergeant Carson A. Holmquist. LS2 Smith. Logistics Specialist, 2nd Class, Randall Smith. Logistics Specialist, 2nd Class, Randall S. Smith. Lance Corporal Wells. Lance Corporal Squire Wells. Lance Corporal Squire K. Wells.
Can you please rise and pass? Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our memorial service honoring the lives and sacrifices of Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Sullivan, Staff Sergeant David Wyatt, Sergeant Carson Holmquist, Logistics Specialist 2nd Class Randall Smith, and Lance Corporal Squire Wells. We ask you at this time to please remain seated until the official party and the families have paid their respects to their loved ones and will depart the arena floor. Thank you for your attendance today.
Good afternoon again. I'm Greg Glover from WRCB TV. You've been watching, as the Sergeant Major said there, the Chattanooga Remembrance Memorial Service wrapping up there at UTC's McKenzie Arena. We heard beautiful performances from both the United States Navy Sea Chanters and the Marine Corps Band New Orleans. Mayor Burke started things for us, but the last person you heard speak there was, of course, the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden. He quoted Isaiah in his remarks, remarks that at many times seem very personal to him, as he is still a grieving father, having lost his son Beau back in June. One of the most striking statements was from the very beginning when, after extended applause and a standing ovation for the Vice President, he said, quote, "I wish I were not here, for I have some sense of how hard it is for you to be here," unquote. But he did acknowledge the mayor, saying, "You should be proud of your city." He acknowledged Senator Corker, saying, "You should be proud of your state." He said while he did not know the fallen five personally, he did know them. In fact, he said they were his sons. They had served with honor, faith, and distinction. He said to the families, quote, "Your country says thank you." So many remarks, but the one that got applause at the end from the Vice President, quote, "Never bet against us. It's always been a bad, bad bet to do that." There were just a few times in this ceremony that got the crowd to applaud, but that statement by him talking about our country absolutely brought them to applause. He said, "The men inspire us. They will not be forgotten and will never forget who they were." Before the Vice President spoke, you heard from Secretary Ash Carter, the Defense Secretary. He said, while the meaning of their killing is yet unclear, he said, we may perhaps never know, and it may never be fathomable. But he said, speaking for the administration, speaking for those serving in the Pentagon, he said, this is something we take personally. And he vetted that by saying that he's asked that the security procedures at military facilities be fundamentally reviewed. And he said, quote, "We will do more if necessary." Many remarks by him. He said, we have come back from tragedy before. And he said, he mentioned a recruit, a new recruit, a female named Alexis, who showed up at the Chattanooga Recruitment Center to say that she was on board, she was volunteering, that what has happened just steeled her resolve to join the armed forces. Another look there at McKenzie Arena as they're allowing people to, I'm told, walk by and pay tribute to the memorials they have set up there, the battle cross that's formed by the boots, the rifle, and the helmets, along with pictures of the fallen five that were on stage beside that lectern where all of the speakers spoke before the Defense Secretary. You heard from Secretary Ray Mabus, the Secretary of the Navy. He says, we are a family, the Navy and Marine Corps family. He called the five heroes, said they will be remembered as such. Their honor and their heroism on that Thursday will be remembered. He says they have holes in their hearts. They will never be completely whole again. He named each man and told their story and named their survivors who were in attendance as well. And he said their lives and their deeds shine forever bright. Before that, you heard Lieutenant Commander Timothy White, the naval commander there at the Operations Center on Amnicola Highway. As we learned yesterday, he shot back during the attacks, but he was there. He began his remarks, as a matter of fact, by juxtaposing the moments before the attack with the moment it happened. Talked about the rustling leaves, a beautiful summer day marred by gunfire that he will never forget. It quickly followed there on July 16th. But he said his is a voice of hope. Said they will not falter in their mission, the members of the armed forces and especially those there on Amnicola Highway in Chattanooga. He called on the living to rededicate themselves to the cause and said on 7/16 the price for freedom was high. He said the warriors would not want us to mourn forever, but said once again the common theme amongst most of the speakers today was that the soldiers, the warriors as they were called, ran into danger along with the police officers from the Chattanooga Police Department, Hamilton County Sheriff's Department. We're told that the motorcade is leaving the arena. That's an important word. If you have someone that's out on the road, maybe coming to visit you, or if you're planning to head out, you may want to either postpone that trip for a while or be prepared to sit still. When this motorcade made its way from the airport to McKenzie Arena, the interstates were shut down for well over half an hour as they made sure there was safe travel, 4th Street, I-24, all the way to the airport there. So if there's someone out there that may be coming your way, let them know that the motorcade is about to leave and that the interstate will once again be shut down. We got calls that it was backed up around Moccasin Bend, maybe all the way back to 59 as the interstate was shut down for a half hour to get the dignitaries out safely. THP, I know, started hitting every exit and moving any cars that had been abandoned there on the interstate about 10 o'clock this morning. So a full day and a full cadre of THP officers working our interstates today. But the motorcade is fired up and ready to move there. You heard Joe Biden, you heard the Secretary of Defense, you heard the Secretary of the Navy, and the Lieutenant Commander Timothy White. Before that, you heard Major Michael Abrams. Major Abrams is the commander of Mike Battery. Of course, the Mike Battery, the one that's represented there at the Naval and Marine Reserve Center on Amnicola Highway as we watch the motorcade leave. In that motorcade, of course, the Vice President, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of the Navy, the other dignitaries headed back to the airport. Major Abrams honored the families, said farewell to his fallen brothers, said he was deeply proud of their selflessness amidst the chaos of 7/16. Again, mentioned the brothers ran toward the danger. He said, quote, "They are not victims. They are Marines. They are sailors." He honored the five, saying they dedicated their short time between eternities to serve their country. He gave his thanks to the communities who showed up, especially along the procession routes when the men were taken to their final resting places. He said, quote, "We experienced your love." There you see the vice presidential vehicles as they head out and back to the airport. And Major Abrams spoke a phrase that once again moved the crowd to applause, again directed this to our enemies. He said, quote, "We will not succumb to fear. We are strengthened and are resolved. You have rallied a nation." Again, moving the crowd to applause there. And the first speaker inside McKenzie Arena there as we got started was Mayor Andy Burke. He said that that one story of Chattanooga ended on July 16th. He said the names of the five are forever bound in the Chattanooga story. On behalf of the city, he told the families, quote, "We grieve with each of you." He spoke of the pride in the police force as well. He said the world had come to us, and he asked the question, what would we become? But he said, we've begun a new chapter. He quoted Isaiah as well, and he said, even through the darkness, the world has seen our brightness, and called on the city to continue to shine. The Vice President heading back to the airport. He'll be heading to Delaware a little later this afternoon. You can find a recap of the service today on our website, WRCBTV.com. And of course, we'll have a recap of the entire day on Eyewitness News at 6 with Matt Barber a little later on. We thank you for joining us. For now, I'm Greg Glover. Have a good evening.